Okie dokie. Hang on a second. Here. Position this a little better. Ooh, not really big and huge. This is what the Lord, so continuing on to Isaiah 50, this is what the Lord says. Where is your mother's certificate of divorce, with which I have sent her away? Or to which of my creditors did I sell you? Because of your sins you were sold. Because of your transgressions your mother was sent away. Now, we read about this a lot in Hosea. Remember Hosea? And I was talking about the northern kingdom of Israel. This is the southern kingdom of Judah. That Hosea gave a literal example, a physical, visible example to the people of the sort of relationship that God has with Israel. Hosea was called to marry a woman named Gomer who proved to be unfaithful to him. At some point, somehow or another, she ended up selling herself or getting sold into slavery to somebody else. Hosea had to go buy her back. Now, we don't really have any information on that. We don't really have any details about that, but he had to go buy her back. And that's basically what God is saying here. Because of transgressions, that Jerusalem, Judah, was sent away. That God never actually gave her a certificate of divorce. She was sent away for a while, but she was not put away. Deuteronomy 24 gives us the marriage laws. Chapter 24, verse 1 of Deuteronomy. If a man marries a woman who becomes displeasing to him because he finds something indecent about her, and he writes her a certificate of divorce and gives it to her and sends her from his house, and if after she leaves his house she becomes the wife of another man, and her second husband dislikes her and writes her a certificate of divorce, gives it to her and sends her from his house, or if he dies, that her first husband who divorced her is not allowed to marry her again after she has been defiled. That would be detestable in the eyes of the Lord. Do not bring sin upon the land the Lord your God is giving you as an inheritance. So God would not be able to take Israel back if he had sent her a certificate of divorce and she had become the wife of another man. So he didn't actually send her a certificate of divorce. Another law to look at here is very early in the law. Remember, they got their first batch of laws pretty much as soon as they got to Mount Sinai after leaving Egypt. So the second half of the book of Exodus actually contains the first batch of laws they were given. Exodus 21. This is very early in the law-giving parts of the Bible. If you buy a Hebrew servant, he is to serve you for 6 years. In the 7th year he shall go free, without paying anything. If he comes alone, he is to go free alone. But if he has a wife when he comes, she is to go with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the woman and her children shall belong to her master, and only the man shall go free. In verse 7, it says, if a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as men servants do. If she does not please the master who has selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. So we have these provisions where God is using the law to say, I can bring you back. Like these conditions under which I would have to give up my claim to you permanently are not met. I did not divorce you. I did not give you a certificate of divorce and send you away and send you to be the wife of another man. I did not, you were not born in slavery to some other master and now you belong to that master. I still own you. I still have my claim to you. I can bring you back. So where is your mother's certificate of divorce with which I sent her away? Or to which of my creditors did I sell you? Because of your sins you were sold. Because of your transgressions your mother was sent away. When I came, why was there no one? When I called, why did no one answer? Was my arm too short to ransom you? Do I lack the strength to rescue you? So he just got done answering them. They mentioned, they asked, can you actually do this? Can plunder be taken from warriors or captives rescued from the fierce? Can you do this, God? He said, yeah. We read that at the end of chapter 49. He said, yes, I can do this. And now he is saying, do you really think I can't? Do you really think that I'm not able to do this? By mere rebuke, I dry up the sea. I turn rivers into a desert. Now, he did that with the Red Sea crossing. He did that when they crossed over the Jordan River on the way back. So he's referring to incidents that happened in their history at this point. Their fish rot for lack of water and die of thirst. I clothe the sky with darkness and make sackcloth its covering. This is Exodus terminology. These were parts of the plagues of Egypt, the plague of darkness and turning the rivers and seas into blood and the fish dying. The sovereign Lord has given me an instructed tongue. So there's another me. So now we're talking about a me again. Who is this me? Who's speaking now? Let's find out. To know the word that sustains the weary. This is the servant again. Remember how... Let's see if I have it written down. If not, I'll have to go back and get it. Well, at any rate, just a few chapters ago, in one of the previous servant songs, in chapter 42, starting at the beginning of the chapter 42, he says, here is my servant whom I uphold. So now God is speaking about the servant. In this song, the servant is speaking about God, but now God is speaking about the servant back in chapter 42. Here is my servant whom I uphold, my chosen one in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will bring justice to the nations. He will not shout or cry out, or raise his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out. That's referring to dealing gently with people who are hurting. Gently mending those who are wounded and suffering. In faithfulness he will bring forth justice. He will not falter or be discouraged until he establishes justice on the earth. So that's the imagery we're connecting this to. That was God speaking about the servant. And now here is the servant speaking about God, saying, the sovereign Lord has given me an instructed tongue to know the word that sustains the weary. He wakens me morning by morning, wakens my ear to listen like one being taught. So this servant is going to do what the sovereign Lord asks him and tells him to do. The sovereign Lord has opened my ears, and I have not been rebellious. I have not drawn back. I offered my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who pulled out my beard. I did not hide my face in the mocking and spitting. So he's going to do what God tells him to do, even to the point of being physically beaten for it. But the Lord, because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore have I set my face like flint. That means he's determined. And I know I will not be put to shame. So of course this is referring to Jesus. I think most people are aware of the story of the beatings and the crucifixions. But just to make clear, okay, we're going to read some verses in the Gospels that fulfill this very thing. During Jesus' trial and, the ordeal, he was arrested, he was taken to trial. He actually faced a couple different trials. And at different times during this process, he was beaten by different groups of people with different instruments and weapons of beating. So he was arrested in the garden. He was taken to face the priests, the Jewish priests, the Sanhedrin, and the high priest. In Matthew 26, verse 67, he's just got done facing the high priest. And they say he's worthy of death because he speaks blasphemy. Then in chapter 26, verse 67, then they spit in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him and said, prophesy to us, Christ, who hits you? Who hit you? Later on, he faces Pilate, the Roman governor in charge. The Jews need the Romans' permission to put someone to death. even though the Sanhedrin has judged Jesus to be worthy of death, they can't actually execute him without Pilate's say-so. So they bring him in front of Pilate to be officially sentenced to death. And Pilate eventually agrees. And before that, he said, it's chapter 27, verse 26, it says he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into the praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him and twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him. "Hail, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him and took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. Mark gives this information. Mark was actually probably written first, at least the narrative, the accounts of the action in Mark were probably written first. He has more detail typically about the things that happen. Mark 14, verse 64, second half of 64, says, "They all condemned him as worthy of death. Then some began to spit on him. They blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said, 'Prophesy,' and the guards took him and beat him." After the Pilate incident, in chapter 15 it says, "The soldiers led Jesus away into the palace," that is, the praetorium, "and called together the whole company of soldiers. They put a purple robe on him, then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on him. And they began," by the way, when we talk about crown of thorns, this is, of course, I'm not in the Gospels yet. I'm in Isaiah. I've still got many books to go before I get to the Gospels. But just as a preview, we think of a crown as like a circlet that goes around the rim of the head. Okay, but Oriental crowns of this region of the world at this point in time would have been caps. Okay, they would have been skull caps. Like I wear a baseball cap that has a bill on it and all that. Okay, so we're talking about something that would have actually fit down on top of the entire head. It would not have been just a crown around the rim of the head. It would have been on the entire head. It would have been a skull cap that would have fitted down. They probably took a piece of tumbleweed or something and twisted it around so it could cram down on top of the entire head. Not just the brim, not just around the side of the head. Just so you know. Anyway, they began to call it that. This is a European style of crown. The wreath or the circlet is the European style of crown, but this is not Europe. This is Palestine. This is Israel. Okay, you know, this is Oriental. This is not Europe. So this is not a European style of crown. Anyway, they put together a crown of thorns and set on him. They began to call out to him, "Hail, King of the Jews." Again and again they struck him on the head with a staff and spit on him. Falling on their knees, they paid homage to him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him out to crucify him. Luke's account is as such. Luke 22, verse 63, "The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded, 'Prophesy, who hit you?' And they said many other insulting things to him." Now, in Luke, we get an account of him meeting Herod in addition to just Pilate. We don't have this account in any other gospel. In Luke 23, verse 11, it says, "Herod and his soldiers ridiculed and mocked him. Dressing him in an elegant robe, they sent him back to Pilate." Apparently, it was Herod who actually gave him the purple robe. Well, we don't have much more of that in Luke. And then John, let's see how if John says anything. John 19, Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged. The soldiers twisted together a crown of thorns and put it on his head. They clothed him in a purple robe. So the flogging was an addition to all the other beatings. They clothed him in a purple robe and went up to him again and again, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews," and struck him in the face. So you have strikes to the face, punches, slaps and punches to the face, pulling on the beard, according to Isaiah. Now, none of the Gospels mention the pulling on the beard, but I guess it would have happened as part of the overall mocking. Spitting. You have the striking on the head with the staff, of course, with the crown of thorns on top. That would hurt. And the flogging, expose the back, you flog someone on the back. So all that happened. So all this stuff that Isaiah is talking about here, and it's going to talk about a couple chapters from now as well, is stuff that happened to Jesus in the account of the Gospels, in the crucifixion, in the resurrection, and the crucifixion. So Jesus, starting up here into Isaiah 50 again, back into verse 4. The sovereign Lord has given me an instructed tongue. So now the servant is speaking. Now previously, when we quoted from Isaiah 42, God was speaking about the servant, and now the servant is speaking about God. The sovereign Lord has given me an instructed tongue, to know the word that sustains the weary. He wakens me morning by morning, wakens my ear to listen like one being taught. The sovereign Lord has opened my ears, and I have not been rebellious. I have not drawn back. I offered my back to those who beat me, my cheeks to those who pulled out my beard. I did not hide my face from mocking and spitting. So he's going to go to this servant is going to be so obedient to the word of the Lord. He's going to go all the way to offering his back to those who want to beat him, because that's what the Lord tells him to do. He's not going to be rebellious. He's not going to draw back. The Lord is going to tell him to do this, and he's going to do it. Because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore have I set my face like flint. So he's determined to do it. And I know I will not be put to shame. Now, this sounds to me like being put to shame. Okay, being beaten and flogged and mocked and spat on. That sounds like being put to shame. I didn't read it. Of course, we'll get there when we get there. But Jesus's place in this execution was meant to be filled by somebody else. There was another guy there named Barabbas, of course, who got released in exchange for Jesus. So this would have been his spot. I don't know if they would have gone. I don't think they would have put a purple robe on him. I don't know. I don't know if they would have done that to Barabbas. But the beating and execution that Jesus received was supposed to be for somebody else. And he was a criminal. That guy was a murderer and had participated or led maybe even an insurrection. Okay, so that's the sort of people you do these sorts of things to. Jesus receives his punishment, but the sorts of people who do usually receive this punishment were the criminals. They were the terrorist leaders or the insurrectionists or whoever. Okay, it's like you didn't crucify good people. Even back in this day and time. Okay. Even back in this barbaric day and time, it's like you didn't crucify somebody unless you had a good reason to crucify that person. And typically, when the person who was crucified was one being put to shame. I mean, crucifixion is something we don't really talk about crucifixion here. Okay, the actual act of crucifixion here isn't really talked about in Isaiah. The beatings are, but not the actual crucifixion per se. Although his death is clearly implied in a couple chapters here. But, the crucifixion itself was a shameful way to die. You were spread out naked in front of everyone, literally put on display and literally hung up and put on display as publicly exposed as possible. So it was meant to be a very publicly shameful way of death. So despite all that, despite the beatings and the sufferings and the mockings, this servant knows he will not be put to shame. He who vindicates me is near. Who then will bring charges against me? Let us face each other. Who is my accuser? Let him confront me. It is the sovereign Lord who helps me. Who is he that will condemn me? They will all wear out like a garment. The moths will eat them up. So those who bring charges against the servant of the Lord, they may seem to be triumphant for a while. They may have the upper hand for all intents and purposes for a period of time. There was a brief period of time for about 2 days where it seemed like the forces of darkness had the upper hand. They had Jesus bound. They were beating him very relentlessly. They killed him. He was dead. There was a period of time from about Thursday evening and Sunday morning where it looked like the bad guys had won. But this servant knows, he's predicting in the future, he knows who's going to vindicate him and who's going to help him. So in the end, who's going to condemn him? In the end, who's going to stand up against him? They are all going to wear out like a garment. The moths will eat them up. Who among you fears the Lord and obeys the word of his servants? And now we're talking to the people again. So given this example of a perfect servant who's going to follow the word of the Lord all the way up to physical shame and punishment and apparent shame, but knowing that the Lord will vindicate him and will not be disgraced because of that. So who among you is going to be like this? Who among you fears the Lord and obeys the word of his servant? Let him who walks in the dark, who has no light, trust in the name of the Lord and rely on his God. But now, all of you light fires and provide yourself with flaming torches. Or all of you who do light fires and provide yourself. So you're trying to do this yourself. You're trying to make your own way. You're trying to light your own fire, light your own way. And you're in darkness. And you're trying, and apparently you know you're in darkness. These people apparently are aware they're in darkness because they're trying to light their own fire. They're trying to light their own way. But all of you who are doing that, go, walk in the light of your fires and of the torches that you have set ablaze. So you go ahead and do that. You go ahead and try to light your own way. This is what you will receive from my hand. You will lie down in torment. So in the end, us trying to light our own way is not going to work. These people apparently were aware they were living in darkness. And they were trying to do something about it, but they were trying to light their own way. The way of the servant is the way to live in the light, even as painful as it may be at times.